everybody, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. I'm Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that felon doctor, here to talk, I think for the last day, maybe, about my own journey, or at least some aspect of it, right? I'm always talking about my journey, but like more specifically here. Today, what I want to talk about, which was super crucial in my journey, and I don't know if this is going to resonate for everybody, but what I had to really learn was how to trust and how to surrender, which are two things I hate. And so what ended up happening, I noticed, when I was from zero, literally like 1 year old, 0 to like 30, very, very, very willful, very self-willful. It was like, if somebody told me no, I was like, yes. I was like, I don't care. Yes, I'm going to figure this out, right? Like if somebody was like, hey, don't do that, I'm like, I'm going to go do it, right? I was just very, very self-willful. And what happened as a result of that, in some ways, was very, very successful. Like I would set out to achieve and accomplish something and it would get done. And I felt very proud of that, like very accomplished because of that. But the thing is, this may or may not be true for some of you, I didn't take advice. I didn't listen to what anybody said. I didn't let anything like infiltrate my beliefs. And it wasn't effective for things like partnership. And so what I realized is it was like, I just was very much my way or the highway. Like, we're going to do this my way, or you can go. There was no real collaboration at like a mind, heart, soul level. And so I realized, like, because I didn't trust anybody else with my plans, my goals, to come into something and help me out. I'm still aware of this belief that I have where I'm like, if I can't do it, I'm not going to ask you to do it, right? That's like a leadership thing, I think, where I'm like, if I can't do it, I'm not going to ask you to. If I can't share my story, I'm not going to ask you to share your story. However, what if it's the strength of yours to share your story? And you doing so can be a good example to me, right? What I've learned for myself in this journey is that I, personally, am not great at letting people pick up the slack because I'm used to being the one that takes care of everything, provides everything, is responsible for everything, is taking care of everything, is like, I'm just doing the thing. So if I don't do it, I'm like, well, I don't expect anybody else to. That's not how partnership works. It's not how trust works. It's not how surrendering works. And so what I had to learn, and am still having to learn, because I was hyper independent and very much like, my way or no way, I got this, I'm taking care of it. I was at the center of my own life and my own will in a way that was not at all productive. Like I was it in the extreme, in a way that is not productive, doesn't serve, okay? And I know that. So for me, what I realized, the whole point, not the whole point, but some point of partnership is for them to be strong when you're weak. But if you're never weak, you never give anybody the chance to show up and be strong for you. So even when I am in my weakness, and I don't mean to say this any arrogantly at all, but like my weakness might be somebody else's, like when I'm the weakest, that might be somebody else's strongest. You know what I mean? And or what most of the time happens is when they're weak, it's easy for me to be strong for them. That's not hard. What I can handle, what I can carry, is more than most people can carry. So what feels heavy and what makes me very weak would probably kill like 50 people times over. Like, honestly. And again, I'm not trying to be arrogant in that. I know any one aspect of any battle that I'm fighting is something that would crush someone else. So for me, my belief is always, I can't possibly put this on you because I know how heavy it is. And if this thing is making me weak, what's it gonna do to you? So I'll just carry it on my own and you don't have to be strong for me. That's the mentality that I've got. That's the logic that I have. And that's not necessarily fair or true. It assumes what the other person can and cannot handle. So I have this happen to me all the time. People do this to me all the time, right? They're like, oh, well, like my stuff is so heavy. I'm like, your stuff is literally light compared to the stuff I deal with. Just give it to me. And people know what I deal with. So they're like, okay, no problem. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, you're suffering in a 5-foot pit. I live in a 500-foot pit. So like, give me your shit. I'm cool with it. You know? Whereas like, I've not really met anybody who has lived in a 500-foot pit that can handle my stuff. So a lot of the times I can talk about my stuff, but like, you can't help me with it. Like, what are you going to do with this? I can talk to you about it, but like, you can't take my load. You can't carry my load. And so that is a really tough thing to bring into partnership, right? And again, I don't know if this applies to you. But if you are somebody who's used to providing, you're somebody who's used to showing up and doing the work and carrying the load, you are going to have a hard time, trust me, I know, with trusting and surrendering, because you feel like you can only trust or surrender to somebody who can carry more than you. And like for me, I've never met anybody who can carry more than I can. So who am I doling stuff off to? And again, that's not to be arrogant. That's just to be like, the fact of the matter is, who's carrying more than I am right now? And if they are carrying more than I am, how the heck am I going to put my crap on them? Right? So if you are somebody who deals with that, I will tell you what I had to do to even get to the point to be aware of that. Okay? I had to come through a lot just to be able to tell you that. So if that is something that resonates and you're like, oh my God, I do that, where I don't ever want to be weak or vulnerable, because I don't think, there's a lot of reasons probably. The reason you don't want to be weak or vulnerable is because 1, you probably feel like it's a weakness. 2, you probably feel like somebody can use it against you. 3, you're like, it doesn't matter anyway, why the F do I care? 4, you're like, okay, yeah, I feel this, but like nothing's going to change. Right? There's probably a lot of reasons that you're like, I don't feel like dealing with this, I'm not going to. And so that will not serve you at high levels. That will keep you small. It will keep you stuck. It will keep you in inauthentic behavior. So what you have to do to start the process, and what I hope you're not forced into doing like I was, because I was forced into submission. Okay, I'll tell you the true story, right? Probation. Well, technically I'm on parole, right? New Jersey is the only system that has a parole system. So I'm on parole for life, okay? And so what that means is that I have to run my life decisions, anything that I do, from my job to my house to travel to my husband to my kids, I have to run it by parole. Now, you can't imagine possibly what it is like for somebody who has never run a decision by anybody in their life. Okay? I didn't run my decision about where I went to school or what I got a degree in or where I applied or what. I've never run a life decision by anybody. Ever. Now, obviously, I could have used some wise counsel. Because if I would have, then like, hey, this kid and I are talking, and like he wants me to send him some nude pictures, should I do it? It would have been a very easy thing to come outside of myself and someone be like, no girl, don't be an idiot. Why in the world would you do that? Why in the world would you trust this 17-year-old? What is wrong with you? Would have been really not even wise counsel, it just would have been common sense, honestly. But when you never come outside of yourself, which I never did, I never asked anybody for help on a life decision. Or if I did, I didn't listen. So what the hell am I asking for? You cannot imagine how crippling it was and can still be to have to run every life decision by somebody else who doesn't give a shit and is just paid to do it. It's not like they're looking in my best interest. They don't care. They're just following a guidebook, a rule book. So I hope for your sake, you don't have to come under the same kind of forced submission that I did. Because the first thing I had to do was surrender my mind. I had to surrender my mind. I had to surrender my thoughts, where it wasn't a weakness to ask somebody for permission. I'm not somebody who ever asked anybody for permission, literally ever. I was the most willful person I know. Sometimes you have to ask for permission. Sometimes you have to ask for forgiveness. But sometimes you have to ask for permission. And I was not the one. I didn't ask anybody for permission. I just did it. It was very willful. So I had to surrender my mind. I had to reframe a lot of beliefs. I had to reframe a lot of thoughts. And then, once I had done that, and I was like, okay, like at first, and I've talked about this before, like I thought that was going to kill me among everything else I was already dealing with, right? But when I was put in that forced submission, that's not a willful surrender. There's a big difference. A willful surrender, which is not even a willful submission, right? There's differences in it, in all of it. We don't like to do it because it makes us feel very weak. But even the best fighters know there are some battles you don't take on. I didn't know that. I learned it the hard way. Still learning it the hard way. Hopefully you don't have to learn it the hard way. Learn how to trust and surrender before you get put into a place of forced submission. And life will do that to you, right? Life will give you this thing that you just like can't handle. Forced submission comes anytime things are too heavy and you buckle under the weight of it, right? If you've ever been like, okay, like I don't know what to do, you're getting to the place of forced submission, forced surrender. And so, willful surrender, and even better, willful submission, is extraordinarily important. To be able to do things like trust and receive, you have to be able to submit. Submit to the fact that you don't know best. I'm saying this knowing how hard it is, because we're so used to having to call the shots. It was very easy for me, and it gets very easy for people to submit to somebody when they know that person knows better. As an example, my PhD mentor, very easy for me to submit to her. I knew she knew the PhD process better than I did, and possibly ever would, because she'd brought a whole bunch of people through it, and she'd done it herself. So that's an easy submission. I'm like, I know you know what you're doing, and I know I have no idea what I'm doing. We don't apply that to our lives. We don't apply that to our lives. We pretend like we know what we're doing, because if we don't, it makes us look like we're weak and like we're out of control, and like, how are we going to figure this out? And like, what the heck? And this is why people in like the 30s and the 40s age range, once they get in free fall limbo of no more academia or no more set schedule or no more societal structure, it's like, what do I do? What is happening? Because they don't trust and they don't submit and they don't say, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now with my life. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to see where I'm led. We don't do that. That feels very foreign, but that's a surrender to life and a trust. Now, again, like for me, I think it is easier when you believe in something higher than yourself. I don't care what that is. God, the universe, the sun, I don't care. Something benevolent out there that is for you. Science, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Like, I don't care. The thing that's tough about science is there's a lot of science that we can't see, right? Like quantum physics. However, I don't care what you believe in. You have to believe in something higher than yourself that wants you to win. You also need to know that there's something higher than yourself that wants you to lose. This is just facts. This is just the truth. Because it's very easy to see, we have good in the world, we have evil in the world, and everything has a source. I don't care what you think about that. That's just science. Like, that's just fact. That's just life. That's just very clear to see. Now, for me, I believe in the Christian God. That doesn't make life easier. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It makes it harder, honestly. It makes it harder because it's like now we've got all these sort of standards that we have to know, right? So I won't go into it. But I will say, the process of believing in something higher than yourself that actually wants you to win is important to the trusting and the surrendering process. It's important. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it easier. Because then you're like, all right, well, I can't see this thing I'm believing in. Great. Just have to hope that I'm doing the right thing. Nobody wants to feel that. And that is why we don't trust well, and that is why we don't surrender well. And I'm just telling you from my own journey, if you want to know how I could be resilient and bounce back and like still have hope and still carry everything that I carry and not succumb to it, this is the shit I had to learn. And am still learning. Because there is the self, there is the community, and then there is partnership. And it is important to be able to do it all. Know yourself well, understand the community well, understand the people you're in partnership with. Like, there's a lot of different dynamics that go into life. And most of us don't really pay attention to the fact that at the center of every dynamic is ourselves. And we have to understand ourselves in order to understand how we fit in everywhere. And what I didn't understand about myself, to the degree that I understand now, which got me into all this trouble, was how very willful I was. How very prideful I was. How very uncomfortable I was with saying no or looking weak. Because really, like, if part of me not wanting to say no to things was I didn't want to look weak or uncomfortable. And I've talked about that in an earlier video, I think. And so at the end of the day, we have to reframe. I had to reframe weakness, vulnerability, trust, surrender. I had to reframe all those things and become aware of where they were very much stumbling blocks in my life, where I had internalized being rejected and not being able to depend on anybody, and like being hurt and being abandoned and not being able to lighten my load ever with anybody. I had to find all those places, which by yourself can be very, 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 very tricky. And like I said, people who are hyper independent and very willful and very much dependent on their own judgment calls will have a hard time with that. Men specifically, I feel like, have a harder time with that. But all that to say, if you want help figuring out, drop me a comment, find me on my socials. I can help coach you through it because I've helped myself coach through it and I've lived through it. So like, I can help you, not a problem. But also, have an academy, drop that below as well, that link, if you want to start getting educated on how you can show up differently in your life. Check that out. Other than that, I think this is going to end my journey and start into a whole new, I think I want to go into toxic. I feel like toxicity is good because there's a lot of toxicity out there, and I think it's important to bring awareness around. So, that being said, appreciate you guys being here. I hope that's helpful for you. Comment below, like, subscribe, grow the channel, and I will see you guys on the next video.